So with this week's episode of Demon Slayer, no more water Hashira. Well, not exactly, but it definitely was a bit of a surprise when Giyu started talking about that. I'm thinking to myself, what, has he been a ghost this whole time? What is he talking about? Why is he so disappointed in Tanjiro? And honestly, when you think about it, Demon Slayer kind of started off with Giyu disappointed in Tanjiro, which is actually so much deeper now that we know his backstory and the fact that he more or less saw himself in Tanjiro, which is why he got so upset when he said, crying over your dead family isn't going to bring him back or whatever he said in that nature. But the idea of feeling like a failure, and not only that, like an outcast, like he doesn't belong with the other Hashiras, paints his character in a completely different light now knowing what we do. Though you can't deny the episode was an absolute hoot and a holler. I mean, did anyone expect Tanjiro to become little sibling mode and absolutely torment him? Because I didn't, but it cracked me up every step of the way. Now, of course, I have full live reactions to all these wonderful episodes of Demon Slayer over on my Patreon. If you want to see my full uncut thoughts, they're going to be over there exclusively. But this was a good episode. It kind of blended the soft, emotional side with the absolute absurdity, which is normally what I associate with Zensu, but you know what? Tanjiro said, hey, we ain't gonna have a lot of the Lightning Boy this episode, so Tanjiro's gonna be the little shit disturber, and goddamn was he the little shit disturber of the episode. So, I very much enjoyed this episode. In fact, I would actually say I enjoyed it more than last week's extra long episode. And I think it just is because I really like it when Demon Slayer gets emotional, whether it is the emotional backstories of the demons they're hunting, or in this case, the Hashiras. And my assumption for this season, given that it is going to run a normal length Demon Slayer season for at least normal length with what we've been used to recently, is that they're going to probably flesh out a lot of the Hashiras, because the vibe I'm getting, especially after what we saw in this episode, what we saw last week, and what they're teasing with the sisters at the end of this latest episode, is that they're most likely going to go down the list and get us caught up and understand them at deeper levels. Which, if this is the final arc before it gets into the endgame, this is the Hashira training arc. This is them preparing because shit's about to hit the fan. This is probably the last time they're ever going to have downtime, and this would be a prime opportunity to get us to understand them on deeper levels. And the idea of using the training arc in this way, and most importantly, fleshing out a character who's been rather distant from the get-go, was a great move in my opinion. I mean, there's definitely Demon Slayer fans who primarily enjoy the show maximum when there's action. Don't get it twisted, I love the Demon Slayer action, it's absolutely brilliant. But for me, if we don't care about them on a deeper level, then when they do die, we're not going to actually shed a tear. There's a reason why the Mugen Train arc was as emotional despite really only knowing the character for that movie. It's because Demon Slayer was very effective at getting us to bond quickly. And what I liked what they did with the backstory is that, without a doubt, he sees himself in Tanjiro. And when he initially saved him and he told him to stop crying, that's not going to bring him back, this, that, and the third, that's more or less him seeing himself in young Tanjiro. Because as we see in the backstory, wishing that you would have died instead of someone so much more talented than you, or you respected more, right? Hating yourself. The idea of having such, the fact that he considers himself a failure, that he didn't pass, that he was saved, he didn't kill a single demon. Like, it's no wonder he feels like an outcast and why he keeps himself distant from the other Hashiras. The unfortunate thing, which I actually thought the Master died last week just with how they were framing it, turns out he's still alive and kicking as it stands. But that's not going to last for too much longer, and I don't know if they're going to be able to have a conversation before then, because I honestly think that if they had a proper conversation after he gets through this emotional hurdle, the most likely what would happen is that, the Master would pat him on the back, even if he can't actually lift his hands, and say, you are deserving of the respect that people are trying to give you, or something like that. But it's making a lot more sense on why he's so disappointed in Tanjiro, because what Tanjiro's saying is true, the water is kind of like the stepping stone to unlocking all these different techniques, but he's saying, yeah, but without you, there's no water Hashira. What are you talking about? You're right here. And he's like, I never finished. It's like, it's such a good story, and it adds extra credibility to even the intro of the show, because if we remember, there was a certain someone who trained us on top of a mountain, and it just so happens to be the best friend and fallen friend of our boy Giyu, which adds even more emotion to what we're seeing. Because rather than it trying to be one of these backstories that's like, oh, they're trying to make you cry from this, it's about, oh, I understand why he's feeling this way and he's so pulled back. But we can't deny that it was also a funny episode. And they honestly blended the two sides very well, because Tanjiro became a little shit. And in very little kid fashion, kids like to annoy. Because if they ask you for something and you continuously say no, well then they're just gonna bug you until you give them what you want. And my boy, the lead character in the emotional whiplash known as Demon Slayer, followed him to the bathroom, eating, sleeping. He couldn't... The fact that the first thing that he says, he's like, wait a second, there's no way that Tanjiro just said that he's coming in, because I didn't let him in. He must have said farewell. And that goofy ass face... I don't know what it is, but I feel like the faces that he was making would fit right at home with Patrick Star and SpongeBob SquarePants. There's something so idiotic about his faces, and it cracked me up the longer it went on. This man's thinking, okay, it's finally nighttime or it's in the morning, I can sleep, and he's like, oh, you thought you could escape from me? What are we doing today? He had no choice but to expose and wear his heart on his sleeve because this man wouldn't leave him alone. I felt so bad. I'm like, Tanjiro, you dumbass. Like, to be fair, he did get the job done. Though it's kind of funny because he's like watching and he says like this line which actually triggers him to start opening up, and he's thinking, oh man, did I step too far? He's already feeling bad about himself. Maybe I should challenge him to an udon eating contest. It's just like, Demon Slayer can be a master at comedy. Sometimes it can be a bit of a whiplash with how they handle it, but there was surprisingly, and probably helps that it wasn't a tearjerker of an episode, so the little shit Tanjiro and the emotional Giyu just kind of complemented each other in a strange sort of way. I don't know, sometimes you think different flavors aren't going to work together, and then episode 2 of Demon Slayer Season 4 comes out and proves us otherwise. And it's probably just recency bias on the reason why Tanjiro's cracking me up as much as he did. But then again, we really don't see Tanjiro as out of pocket by himself as this episode, but you definitely gotta admit that has to be in at least a top 10, top 5 funniest Tanjiro moments for sure. Him being a little shit sibling is just, I kinda wanna see more of it, which I never thought I'd say. But this was a very fun episode. I definitely enjoyed it more than episode 1, not that I thought episode 1 was boring. In fact, I mean, episode 1 kicked off in a very fun way. But it was something just so different than what you're expecting, and if they are going the route that I think they are, which is letting each of the Hashiras, or more of the Hashiras, have that emotion and learn, especially with how they hint at the end with the sisters there. I mean, hey, I'm gonna tell you how she died and how we can kill the demon that did so. Like, it feels like that's the point of this arc, rather than them actually training. That's happening in the background, but we're learning about them as people. And that ED from Hyde might be my favorite ED of the season. The opening's kind of whatever for me, but the ED, I felt like you could slap that bad boy on Death Note and it would have fit right at home. But let me know what you thought down below on this week's episode. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course ring that bell so you know if I would upload more, and like I mentioned, got those full live reactions over on Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. Alrighty, so today we have Zane Sardonks, Still Zero, Natasha and Henry, Agus TR, Juan Carlos James Jr., Leaf Solmond, Chitin Lord, and we also have Amanda Laboot. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and y'all have a good one.